Today we're going to make a sweater similar to the one that Wednesday wears in the show Wednesday. Please stick around and I'll go through all the directions of how I was able to put this together. Instead of making it a cardigan, I did make it a pullover because the details in the actual sweater were kind of difficult to do by hand as opposed to a machine-made product that she wears in the show. To make the sleeve, we're going to begin with a rib at the cuff. We're going to have stripes that are 8 rows a piece, and then eventually, to create a set-in sleeve effect, we're going to do some shoulder shaping at the top over here. We're going to begin by casting on 28 stitches. And we're going to do a knit purl rib for 8 rows. And here is my 8 rows of rib. Now I'm going to knit 8 rows flat in the black, but every 6 rows I'm going to do an increase on either end. So I'm going to end up doing 6 rows of the black, do the increases, and then another 2 rows of the black. So now I'm going to do 6 rows of stockinette. So I've done my 8 rows of black, and now I'm ready to introduce the white. Don't cut this yarn. It's going to be really loose at first, but it does tighten up. So you're going to just knit the first stitch with your white like that. Pull this tail, and you have to kind of just hold everything and then knit across. And again, I'm going to tighten this in like 1 second. Pull that, and that brings it together. So this is row 1 of the white. So what I want to do though is that I don't want to cut this yarn. I want to actually just trail the other colors up the side so that when I'm ready for the next stripe, my color is right there. So what I'm going to do is we're going to drag this black yarn all the way across the 8 rows, and then we're going to drag the white across the 8 rows as well. So the way we do that is just make sure everything is tight, all of these loose-ish tails. And then we're going to take this black yarn and we're going to twist it over our white like that. Okay, so it just goes on top of it. And then we're just going to knit across with the white. And I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. So let's just knit a few. And then if you pull on this, you can see that the black is just secured under that twist we just did, and it's just going to trail all the way across the top every time you just slip it over the working yarn that you're using. This is row 5 before our next increase. At this point, I just count the rows if I'm not quite sure what I'm up to, because it really is the increases and the stitches before an increase that are the more important rows to keep track of. So I need to know that this is row 4 before I do my increase, and I need to know that I've already done 1 increase. So this is going to be row 5 before the increase, but I also have to mentally just remind myself that I need 8 rows of white and 8 rows of black. So there's a couple of little things to juggle in your mind while you do this, but as you do more rows, it becomes easier. So this is row 5, and now I'm up to my increase row again. Okay, there's one side, and then we're going to go to the end, and here's my increase again. Okay, so that was my increase. So now I've done 2 increases, and that was row 6. So now I'm going to restart this counter because now I have to reset again with my increase. I'm going to do another 6 rows and then the increase. And I also have my color change here again. So I'm going to just take this black yarn, wrap it over the white that I'm using right now, and I'm going to knit across so that the black can trail alongside the edge. And you can see that that is twisted alongside. And what's nice is it does pull to the back, so you're not going to see it along the edges. I start counting these rows manually. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 rows, so that means I have 5 rows, so that means I have 3 more rows of white before I do the next stripe. And you're just going to keep doing this until you've done 9 increases, which is 46 stitches total on your needles when you're done with your increase. And then we'll move on to the armhole and shoulder shaping. I've completed all of my increases. I've done 9 increases over 6 rows all the way up. So this is going to amount to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6.5 rows of the stripes. Now if we look at the actual finished sleeve, in the middle of 7, we're going to do 8, 9, and 10, but on the 7th row of this 10th stripe, we're going to begin doing the decreases. I suggest at this point, finish the stripe that you're currently on, which is the one that I have on my needles right here, and then do 2 stripes flat without any increases, and then 6 stitches of the white stripe. And we'll begin doing the armhole shaping, which is all of this stuff over here. I've done all my increases and stripes, so now I have 46 stitches on my needles. And now I'm going to begin doing the armhole and shoulder shaping. Just finished row 7, so now I'm up to row 8, which is going to be my last row of my white. I'm going to bind off 3 stitches on the next 2 rows. So it's going to be 3 stitches on this end. I'm going to go all the way to the end of the needle. Then I'm going to bind off 3 and go all the way back. So here's 1, and just trail your black yarn behind just so that it's lined up with everything. So here's binding off 1, 2, 3, and now I'm going to just knit all the way to the end. I'm at the end of that row, and now I'm going to bind off 3 stitches again, and this is my row 8. So that was my row 7, this is my row 8, and then the next row is going to be black. So 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to purl all the way to the end of this row. I wanted to show you, because I twisted the black yarn around the white as I was binding off, this black yarn now was carried through. So now I'm back to my black, so I'm going to twist the white over the black so that it's carried behind, and I'm going to bind off 2 stitches at the beginning of the next 2 rows. So there's 1, and again I'm going to carry my white behind by twisting it over, and here's 2. And I'm going to knit to the end, and on the next row I'm going to bind off the next 2 stitches. I'm at the end of this row, so now I'm going to bind off 2 stitches on my new row. These are purls, so I'm going to do purl bind offs. So 1, 2, and I'm going to purl to the end. Now I'm going to make a decrease at the end of each side of the needle. So I'm going to do a decrease at the first 2 stitches and the last 2 stitches on the right side, so only on the knit side, not on the purl side, and I'm going to do that 2 times. Again, we want to twist our white yarn on top of our black so that it's carried behind, and I'm going to knit 2 together. And then I'm going to go all the way to the last 2 stitches, and then I'm going to knit the last 2 stitches together, and then I'm going to purl back without doing any decreases, and then I'm going to repeat this process again. So now I'm going to purl all the way across, not doing anything special. I'm on my right side again, so I'm going to twist that white over. Again, I'm going to do a decrease at one end, go all the way to the last 2 stitches, and do a decrease on the last 2 stitches as well. And this counts as my second row of doing this. And we're also still keeping track of our stripes, so this is row 5 of my black stripe, And when I get to 8, I'm going to switch to my white again. Here are my last 2 stitches, and I'm going to knit them together for the decrease. Now I'm going to decrease at each end of the needle for 4 rows, regardless of the right or wrong side. So I'm on the purl side, so I'm going to do a decrease right here at this end. And I'm going to purl to the last 2 stitches and do a decrease over there as well. And we're going to do that 4 times. Here's our last 2 stitches of row 3 of decreases. I'm going to purl these 2 together. And now I'm up to row 4, which I have to do with my white. So I'm going to flip the black on top of the white. So I'm going to twist these 2 around. And now I'm going to knit 2 together in white. Go to the end and then knit the last 2 stitches together as well. My last 2 stitches, and I'm going to do a decrease right there. So now I've done my 4 rows of decreases on both ends, and you can see that the shaping, the armhole shaping, is really starting to come together. Now we're going to do decreases over 6 rows, but we're only going to do the decreases on the right side. So right now I'm on a purl side, so I'm going to purl across flat without doing anything. And then on the next row, I'm going to do a decrease on either end, and I'm going to do that 6 times. So only decreases on the right side. So this row, I'm just going to go to the end and not do anything special. I'm just purling to the end. Okay, I've done my purl row, so now I'm going to twist my black over the white, and I'm going to do a decrease at either end of my right side row. So I just did a decrease, and now I'm going to knit across, and we're going to knit these 2 together. We're up to row 4 of our decreases, and we've also done 8 rows of our white, so now we have to go back to black. So we're going to do a decrease with the black, knit across, and do a decrease again for row 4. And here's our last row. This is row 6 of our decreases, which will leave us with 10 stitches on the needles. And we do a decrease right there. And now I'm just going to bind all of these stitches off. We've bound off our 10 stitches. I'm going to cut both the white and black tails. Pull this through. And there is the sleeve completed. So you can see we have the armhole shaping, the shoulder up here, and we have all of our beautiful black and white rows. Now we're going to work on the front, and we want the front to mirror the back panel. So we're going to cast on again with 54 stitches. We're going to do 8 rows of ribs, and then we're going to do 7 rows of stripes until we get up to the underarm shaping. So over here you'll see the back panel, it has the rib, and then 7 stripes before I begin doing any decreases or shaping. This is so that when we sew it all together, the stripes will line up really nicely. I'm casting on my 54 stitches. And now I'm doing my first row of the rib, which is just going to be a knit purl. And just make sure you count your rows so that you have 8 rows for each section. So I'm just doing my knit purls. So here is my 8 rows of rib. And now I'm going to do 8 rows of stocking net. So no ribs anymore. We're just going to do 8 rows of black stocking net. I've done my rib of 8 rows, and I've done my 8 rows of black. And now I'm going to introduce the white. We're not going to cut the black, and instead we're just going to trail the colors that we're not using alongside the piece so that we don't have a bunch of loose ends. So to introduce the white, I'm going to knit my first stitch of the white. I'm just going to pull that through as if it is my loose thread. This is going to be kind of loose in the beginning, but it does tighten up as you go along, so just you have to kind of deal with it in the beginning. Okay, so I knitted my first stitch. I'm going to tighten all that up in a moment. So I'm going to knit a few stitches right here. And now I'm going to just pull on the white and the black tails to tighten that up. And I'm going to knit all the way to the end. And on the next row, I'll show you how I trail the black all the way up along the side. And now we're at the end of the second row, so I'm back to the knit side where my black strand is. And because this is just the beginning of introducing our new color, just kind of pull on everything just to make sure it's secure. And then we're going to twist the black yarn over our white like that. And then just hold it with your other finger, and then we're going to knit across, and that is going to secure the black yarn so that it can trail all the way along the side. So now that I've done a few stitches, you'll be able to see that the black is actually going to just come along the whole way as we go across. I'm at the end of that purl row, so again I have my black and my white, and they're set up kind of like that. And we're going to just twist the black over the white just once, and I secure it with this finger, and then I kind of hold everything with my hand, and then I'm going to knit across like that. And then if we just want to see what this looks like, if you give it a little tug, you're going to see that the black is secured by that first stitch that we do on each row. So I'm just going to continue doing this until I have 7 stripes, 8 rows a piece. And I will come back when we're ready for the neck, arm, and shoulder shape. I've done my 7 stripes, and now I'm going to begin doing the armhole shaping. So I'm going to begin. I just finished my 8th row of my black stripe, so I'm going to do this shaping with my white. So I'm going to twist these around to catch up the white, and I'm going to bind off 3 stitches on both sides. So on this row I'm going to bind off 3 stitches, and then at the beginning of the next row I'm going to bind off 3 stitches as well. So there's one. And again, just make sure you carry the black along with it. Three. And now I'm going to knit all the way to the end of this row. I'm at the end of that row, and now I'm going to bind off at the beginning of this row. So these are going to be purl bind offs. So here's one. I'm going to bind off 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. And now I'm going to purl all the way to the end. So at this point we've bound off 6 stitches over 2 rows. I finished purling that row, and now I'm going to bind off 2 stitches at the end of the next 2 rows. So this is 1, and again make sure you bring that black along with you. This is 1 stitch bound off. Twist the black over. This is the 2nd stitch bound off, and then I'm going to knit to the end and do 2 bind offs on the next row on the purl side. So we're just going to knit to the end here. Okay, I knitted to the end, and now I'm going to purl bind off 2 stitches. And now I'm going to purl all the way to the end. So this is what we have right here. This is the beginning of the armhole. And now we're going to decrease 2 stitches on both sides on the same row only on the right side twice. So I'm going to decrease 1 stitch on either end on this row. I'm going to purl back, decrease 1 stitch on every end. So at this point my shaping is looking like this. Now we're up to the part where we're going to begin doing our V-neck shaping. So I still have 1 decrease to do right here, and then when we do pick up the other side of the V-neck, you're going to have to do a decrease here as well, because we're going to split it in half. I have 42 stitches here, so I'm going to knit 21 stitches, and then I'm going to put the other 21 stitches onto a stitch holder. So I'm going to do that right now. I still am going to keep my color changes, so I'm going to twist the black over, but I first need to do my decrease, but I'm going to count that as 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 21. Okay, so that's the side I'm going to work on, and these remaining stitches I have to put on my stitch holder. Okay, so there are all the stitches on the stitch holder, and just secure that. So I have my V-neck split like this. I'm going to purl back, and then every right side row in the center here, I'm going to do 1 decrease 8 times. Right here, I'm just going to purl back without doing anything, but also please keep track of your stripes so that you don't lose your striping pattern as well. So now I'm on my knit row. I've done 8 white, so now I need to bring back the black, and I'm going to knit to the end, and I'm going to do my first V-neck decrease on the last 2 stitches. Okay, last 2 stitches, and just do a decrease. Now I'm going to purl back without doing anything. Okay, end of the row, over the black, and we're going to knit to the end and do our second decrease for the V-neck. Okay, last 2 stitches and do the decrease right there, and then we're going to purl back, and we're going to do that over the course of 8 decreases. And this is my 8th decrease for the V-neck. So I just want to show you how that looks. So we have the V-neck here, and then we're going to start doing the shoulder. Now we're going to do a decrease at the neck edge every 4 rows. So I'm going to do 4 rows plain, and then I'm going to do a decrease, then another 4 rows plain, and then another decrease. So I'm going to purl to the edge. That is my 8th row of white, so now I'm going to bring back the black. This is now row 2. I'm just going to knit it. I'm on row 4 now, so I'm going to do my first of the 2 decreases. So this is 1. Okay, and the decrease is right there. And now I'm going to do this again, where I'm going to do 3 rows, and then on the 4th do a decrease. So I did my second decrease, and this is what our V-neck looks like. And you should have 10 stitches on your needle. I'm going to knit 1 more row of the black to bring us up to 8. To do the final shoulder shaping, I'm going to do 3 rows just of white plain, just to give us the right height that we need. So this is just going to be 3 rows of white with no shaping. And on row 5, I'm going to bind off 5 stitches. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then knit to the end, roll back once, and then bind these stitches off as well. Cut the yarn and secure it like that. You can cut this black one as well. And there is our V-neck. It's a nice deep V-neck. I really love deep V-necks. We have our shoulder shaping here, and here is our armhole. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm not going to record the entire thing, but I will walk you through attaching the new yarn. So I'm just going to slide these stitches off the stitch holder and put them on my needle. So I want this to be symmetrical, so I'm going to begin on the wrong side and I'm going to purl to the center. I'm going to attach my yarn, so you just kind of hold it like that. It's a little loose in the beginning, so just be prepared for that if you haven't done this before. And it does tighten up though as you go along, but I highly recommend holding that tail with your finger until you get going with it. So I'm just going to purl to the center, tighten that tail, and we're going to do the mirror image of what we did before. And now we're in the center, so we're going to do our first decrease, and we're going to again do this over the course of 8 decreases. Just a decrease, purl back, decrease, purl back. Okay, and I'll come back to you when we're done with that. And here is the V-neck completed. So you can see the shoulder shaping, our nice V-neck, and the arms. And again, everything is nice and symmetrical. There was a problem with my video footage for making the back panel, but you're going to do it exactly the same as for the front, where you're going to cast on 54 stitches. You're going to do 8 rows of rib and then 7 stripes until the armhole shaping. And I'm just going to post the written pattern here so you can do the shaping for the back and the arms. Take your back panel and you're going to see that the bound off stitches, this little ladder here, matches what we did over here. So right sides together. I have a bunch of stitch markers that are going to hold this together as pins. I'm going to line up these 5 stitches like this. I'm going to insert these stitch markers. Okay, so everything is nicely lined up. I cut a fairly long strand of white, and I'm going to do all of my sewing in white, including the sleeves, because I feel like it shows up less. And I need a yarn needle here, so I'm going to thread this, and I'm going to do a mattress stitch. So I'm going to lay this out flat, and I'm going to do this on the wrong side so the seam is not visible on the front. So I'm going to insert this needle through my first 2 stitches right here and leave a decent tail. And then I'm going to look for the bars. I'm going to take this stitch marker out so it's out of the way. And then I'm going to look for the bars which are in between the V's of our stitches. So there's one, and I'm going to pull this through, and for the first stitch you're just going to do 1 bar across from each other, and then I'm going to do this bar. On the next stitch, I'm going to look for the next bar. And the bar above it. So I'm going to do 2 bars for the next stitch and all the stitches thereafter. So there's 2. And then I'm going to find the 2 bars on the opposite side. Okay, and then you're going to end up with this sort of ladder effect. Now I'm going to go across again and look for the next 2. So there's 1. There's the second. There's 2. And then we're going to look for the opposite ones. 1, 2. And then start to pull on this so that, you know, you can see and we're just going to keep going up. When you get all the way to the top, you're just going to pull on this to make sure everything comes together. And then you're going to do this also on the opposite side. Now we're going to start pinning in the arms. So you're going to lay this out and fan out the armhole as best you can. And then get your arm, and here's your sleeve. So we're going to find the midpoint of the sleeve, and you can do that by just folding it in half, and it's right there. And that midpoint is going to connect to the middle of this seam. So I'm going to put a stitch marker right there. Okay. And then this is where it gets a little weird. We're going to put stitch markers on the ends here, all the way on the very corners first. So I'm going to put one here. I'm going to put one on the opposite side, right at the corner. Right there. Okay, and now we're going to just start rolling the sweater, because again, all this stockinette is going to want to curl, and you're just going to start easing the sleeve into the armhole. It might not be 100% perfect, which is always okay, and we're just easing it in. Try to line up your stripes if you can. I really tried to make these stripes line up. So there's one side of the sleeve inserted. Now we're going to do the same on the other side. So there is the sleeve pinned inside. It fits, which is always great. And I'm now going to do the same edging as I did with the mattress stitch to sew it together. And here's just a side view of it put together as well, just so you can see how it's going to lay. So here is the sleeve completely inserted. So now that we've finished the sleeve, we're going to fold this over like this, and we're going to sew up the side and all the way down, and then it'll be done. Do this the same way with the mattress stitch. So here is the sweater all sewn together. Here are all of our seams, our sleeves are put together, our cuffs, and this all came together really nicely. So now we need to start doing the neck, and this is a sailor style collar. We're up to making the collar. So we're going to start out with 96 stitches, and we're going to do a bunch of decreases so that we get down to 80 stitches, which is the number of stitches that I have around my neckline. So I'm going to cast on my 96 stitches, and then I'm going to do a purl one, and then I'm going to cast on my 96 stitches, and then I'm going to do knit one, purl one, rib, and on every third row on either end of the needles I'm going to do a decrease. So each row is going to have 2 decreases, one at each end, and then I'm going to do that every 3 rows until I have 80 stitches total. I've done my 2 rows and now I'm ready to do my decreases, but I want my decreases to slant in the correct way. So I'm going to do a slip, slip, knit, so that it goes in the direction that I want. So that's the first decrease on one end, and then I'm going to just follow the pattern all the way, and then I'll do a decrease on the other end as well. I'm at my last 2 stitches on this row, and these 2 I can just do as a regular decrease because it's going to slant in the correct direction. So that's my first set of decreases, and I'm going to do this 16 times. I want 16 decreases so that I end up with 80 stitches all together, a decrease every 3 rows. So I will come back when I'm done doing all of those decreases. I've reduced my 16 stitches, so I have 80 stitches now on my needles, and this was 8 rows of decreases, which resulted in 16 stitches. So now I'm going to knit 10 rows flat without any decreases, still following our rib pattern. I finished my 10 rows, so now I am just binding off the top edge here. But here is roughly what the collar looks like. I'm just going to bind all of these stitches off to the end. The collar is bound off, and now what I've done is I've used stitch markers to attach the entire collar onto the neckline of the sweater, but I did it from the outside because when we're done seaming this together, we want the seam underneath the collar. Okay, so you're going to attach it all the way around like this to basically make it almost look like a high turtleneck, and then I'm going to do a mattress stitch all the way around the whole thing. And in an earlier part of the video I did explain how to do the mattress stitch. Okay, and then I will check in with you when that part is finished. And here is the whole sweater completed. I also sewed some buttons on to replicate what we saw in the TV show. There's the collar completely attached. Here are my sleeves, my ribs, and I think it came out fairly similar to the sweater that she wears in the show. If you give this sweater a try, please let me know. Thank you for watching this. This was a really long, detailed set of instructions, and if you stuck it out, I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Bye-bye.